Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Coming up on today's edition of Business Daily. Korea and China agree to extend their currency swap deal, which expired this week, until the year 2020. The agreement comes despite the ongoing diplomatic row over Seoul's THAAD deployment. Samsung Electronics expects record profits in the third quarter thanks to booming demand for its displays and memory chips. These stories and more coming right up. Now, we thought this might happen after China's Communist Party Congress, which starts next week, but it happened faster than expected. Korea and China have agreed to extend their currency swap deal, putting an end to weeks of uncertainty. Now, despite concerns over diplomatic tension between the two countries, a deal was struck to renew the arrangement until the year 2020. Our Yellen starts us off.
South Korea and China's $56 billion currency swap deal is here to stay. After a few days of will they or won't they following the agreement's expiration earlier this week, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol and Finance Minister Kim Dong-yeon confirmed the extension of the deal at the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting in Washington, D.C. on Thursday evening. The currency swap allows Seoul and Beijing to use their currency to buy U.S. dollars from one another at a predetermined rate in cases of financial crisis. The deal was initially signed back in 2009 for a $26 billion currency swap. After being expanded to the current $56 billion in 2011, the deal was extended in 2014, and this latest extension secures the deal for another 3 years. Korea also has currency swaps with other global partners such as Australia, Indonesia, and Malaysia. But the agreement between Seoul and Beijing accounts for some 46% of the total value of currency swap deals Korea has with foreign countries. Market experts commented that the deal's extension will bring much economic benefit to both sides, and pundits expressed hopes that this may help thaw diplomatic tensions between the two over Korea's decision to install the U.S. anti-missile system THAAD. Yellen, Business Daily.
The Korean government will do its best to reach its 3% growth target this year by managing external risks and pushing forward with income-led growth. This, according to Finance Minister Kim Dong-yeon speaking at the G20 Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors meeting in Washington, D.C. on Thursday. Earlier this week, the IMF upgraded Korea's growth forecast for this year and the next to 3%, higher than its earlier projection back in April. Kim said although numbers are important, the government will work to ensure such growth is sustainable and leads to actual improvement in the quality of life for ordinary Koreans. He added that in order for Korea to achieve such growth, it needs to be wary of changes in global monetary policies, as well as growing trade protectionism around the world. A termination of the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement is still a high possibility, according to Trade Minister Kim Hyun-jong speaking at a parliamentary audit on Friday. He said Korea is preparing for all possible outcomes in the upcoming negotiations, including a U.S. withdrawal from the agreement as the country seeks to protect national interests and not give in to unilateral demands. Kim added a one-sided pullout by Washington is a realistic possibility given its recent exit from the TPP and UNESCO. Korea is still open to the idea of filing a petition to the World Trade Organization regarding China's economic retaliations over Seoul's deployment of THAAD. This, according to the Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy, Baek Eun-kyu, also during a parliamentary audit at the National Assembly today. Baek added that Korea needs to evaluate its chances of winning such a case and will continue to seek dialogue with China ahead of its 19th National Congress. Samsung appears to be roaring back after its problems with the Galaxy Note 7 last year as it released its earnings guidance for the third quarter, and the figures show a pleasant reading for the firm's shareholders. But it's not all good news for Samsung today as its vice chairman and CEO plans to walk away from the company. Our Kim Hae-sung has more.
Record profits in the third quarter. Samsung Electronics said Friday it expects unprecedented operating profits of around $12.8 billion for the July to September period, almost tripling from the same period last year, also beating a Thomson Reuters average forecast of $12.6 billion. The tech giant's revenue rose nearly 30% on year to 62 trillion Korean won, close to $55 billion. Experts attributed the record profits on rising demand for displays and memory chips.
On top of memory chips like DRAM and OLED, sales of the newly released Galaxy Note 8 smartphone further lifted its mobile division profits. The Galaxy Note 8 is about 10% more expensive than the Note 7, yet sales are expected to meet market estimates.
The breakdown of its performance by division will be clear when Samsung releases its final earnings results later this month. Shortly after the guidance was released, however, Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman and CEO Kwon Oh-hyun announced he is stepping down. In a statement, Kwon said the time has come for the company to start anew with new spirit and young leadership to better respond to challenges. Samsung said Kwon, who first joined the company in 1985, will not extend his term as chairman of the board of directors, which expires in March. While Samsung will likely enjoy another record earnings in the fourth quarter thanks to continued rise in memory chip demand, experts say Samsung chairman Lee Jae-yong's ongoing trial and diversification of its businesses remain as mid to long-term challenges. Kim Hae-sung, Business Daily.
And now moving on to our coverage of the markets, we have our markets contributor Lee Ji-hye joining us on the line. Hello, Ji-hye.
Hello, Ji-yoon.
So tell us how local stocks performed on the last trading day of the week.
Sure, Ji-yoon. The benchmark Kospi lost 0.05% to close at 2,473.62, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq closed 0.52% lower at 663.08. Market bellwether Samsung Electronics fell 1.46%. SK Hynix also lost 2.71%, while POSCO closed 3.83% higher. Hyundai Motors fell by 1.28%. LG Chem also fell by 1.06%, and Naver also lost 0.78%. And by sectors on the upward slope were cosmetics, which gained by 5%, and electric appliances and products, which gained by 3.47%, and this was followed by venture capital and pharmaceuticals, while biotechnology, health management services were the ones on the downward slope.
Now, can you tell us how other markets across Asia performed overall this week?
Sure, Ji-yoon. Asian stocks were at the highest level in nearly a decade high this week. MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan rose to its highest since December 2007 and was last up 0.2%. Japan's Nikkei was up 0.96% after brushing the 20,980.92 mark, its highest since December 1996. And Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index also scaled a decade high before dipping 0.05%. With the snap elections coming up in Japan, polls are showing a high probability of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's ruling party to maintain its supermajority in parliament. This outcome may suggest his reflationary economic policies are likely to continue, as well as further easing by the Bank of Japan. Analysts say that economic fundamentals are sound, indicated by strong data such as the Chinese PMI, US ISM, and Japanese Tankan. All of these factors are pointing to a rise in global stocks overall. Global equities are now seen brushing aside geopolitical risks, such as the secessionist push in Spain, as well as tensions on the Korean Peninsula, which are now easing somewhat, driving equities to record highs.
Well, let's turn our focus back home. The Kospi hit a record high yesterday, and it's being attributed to the return of foreign investments in the local equity market. Could you tell us more?
Sure, June. Foreign investors returned in force following the lengthy Chuseok holiday, helping local stocks rally all week long. And this is a notable shift in sentiment after many had forecasted a rather sluggish third quarter for the Kospi, especially in terms of foreign buyers. Now, many are crediting positive Q3 earnings from leading Korean firms as the driving force of this, as well as improvements in the macroeconomic picture for major markets around the world. Others are also crediting eased uncertainties in domestic policies and Korean politics, especially with no further provocations coming from North Korea recently and rather cooling rhetoric from U.S. President Donald Trump. As for next week, many are forecasting the Kospi to surge into the 2,450s or even into the 2,500s, saying that the rally will extend into next week and possibly continue into early next year as well. This has been Lee Ji-hye for Business Daily.
A recent survey by the Wall Street Journal shows 95% of economists expect the U.S. Federal Reserve to raise interest rates in December. The poll conducted between last Friday to Tuesday shows 56 of the 59 surveyed were predicting a rate hike by the end of the year. They also estimated the borrowing rate would be raised by a quarter percentage point to a range of 1.25 to 1.5%. They also predicted 3 additional rate hikes by the U.S. Central Bank next year. Minutes from the Fed's September policy meeting showed most board members are in favor of a rate hike by year's end, despite lingering concerns over low inflation. There have been growing concerns over the fall in Korea's working age population, especially as the country's baby boomers are now approaching their retirement age. So to tackle this issue, experts are calling for more labor participation from senior citizens and women. Our Lee Joo-young tells us more.
62-year-old Seok Hong-soon has been leading a busy life in the past 3 months. She's working as a barista at this cafe, a collaborative venture between local residents and the government. She says she feels more financially secure and feels more alive.
I was so bored before, but I think this work gives me new meaning in life. I love my job and I feel more energetic.
Seok's case lends proof that the creation of quality jobs is considered the best form of welfare for the elderly by far. But currently, roughly 82% of occupations being offered by the government to senior citizens largely consists of manual labor like childcare facility assistants and cleaners, giving the elderly little room to advance in their second career. Experts say it's important to offer additional training opportunities for the elderly so that they can synergize with their previous careers and that both the public and private sectors have no reason not to employ these older workers that are equipped with desirable skill sets and knowledge.
I think it's crucial to create a wage system that reflects productivity. If a prospective employee is deemed to be highly productive, they should be hired regardless of age.
Further support is being called for working women as well and helping them become an active part of the workforce. Data from the OECD shows Korea's female employment rate has surpassed the 50% mark in 2016, but still roughly 20 percentage points short compared to males. An environment where women can achieve a better work-life balance is being called for, with roughly 1.9 million women having experienced a gap in their career due to childcare-related reasons in 2016.
The liberty to take maternity leave and increasing the number of childcare facilities are seen as the best ways to boost the sagging birth rate.
Instead of solely focusing on short-term growth, an overhaul of the entire economic framework is being called for so as to accommodate changes in the demographic structure. Lee Joo-young, Business Daily.
How many times do you swipe your plastic? More and more Koreans are now charging their credit cards instead of using cash. In fact, Korea saw its highest ever daily credit card spending, with the number of transactions surpassing the 1 billion mark for the first time in the first half of this year. Our Yoo Jun-hee has the story.
Cash may be king, but more and more Koreans are turning to plastic to fulfill their payments. According to data from the Bank of Korea, daily credit card spending in the country hit a record high in the first 6 months of the year. The figure, at some 1.76 trillion won, or roughly $1.5 billion, represents an 8.3% on-year gain. In the month of May, the total number of credit card transactions exceeded the 1 billion mark for the first time, a feat that was repeated in the following month. Zooming in further, personal payments took up the lion's share compared to corporate card transactions. The average Korean swiped his or her personal plastic 18 times on average in June. The rise in the number of credit card transactions is expected to continue into the second half. Contributing to this trend is the growing use of plastic even on small purchases worth less than $1, especially at 24-hour convenience stores. The average transaction amount on credit in the first half came to nearly $40, down 1.2% from the same time last year. As more and more people turn to credit for even small purchases, the country looks to be moving closer to becoming a cashless society. But this also means small mom-and-pop shops are bearing a heavier burden in credit card transaction fees, requiring a solution to lessen the strain. Yujuni, Business Daily.
Seoul has been ranked the 14th safest city in the world, according to the Economist Intelligence Unit's Safe Cities 2017 Index. The Korean capital climbed 15 places in the standings compared to the previous study in 2015, with Tokyo, Singapore, and Osaka taking the top 3 spots. The report evaluates the safety of 60 major cities across the world based on an index comprised of 49 key indicators. Now, Seoul earned high marks on digital, health, and personal security, though it did take a step back in infrastructure security. Korea's character and animation industries are growing rapidly, but are still suffering from a chronic lack of funds. In response, the country's Creative Content Agency and Credit Guarantee Fund have come together to provide local businesses with customized financial support. Our Park Se-young has more.
This animation is shown on TV and has been turned into a musical. It's considered a successful case of university business cooperation, but it's nearly impossible for the character's creators to attract investment.
We need to have collateral assets and provide financial statements. It's almost impossible to get investment, and the financial sector usually turns us away.
The industry's investment climate is gloomy, as it is difficult for creative content to be recognized as a valuable asset. This is why the Korea Creative Content Agency and Credit Guarantee Fund have prepared a customized support program for the 80% of content makers that are considered small businesses.
Our financial service offers content businesses long-term loans at low interest rates without demanding collateral.
When businesses apply for the program, the Korea Creative Content Agency reviews their content value and credit rating and calculates the credit they can be guaranteed. Park Se-young, Business Daily.
Over the past few years, Korea has been investing in Uzbekistan to help improve the country's agriculture sector. And that project has made some notable progress, with Uzbekistan now seeing higher yields for many of its crops. Our Cho Sang-min reports.
Korea is seeing results from one of the many investment projects it's launched to help developing nations around the world. The Korea Project on International Agriculture, or KOPIA, which in charge of overseas project under the Rural Development Administration, says Korea's agricultural technology and methods have proved successful in Uzbekistan. Since establishing a center in Uzbekistan in 2009, KOPIA has been providing seeds for agricultural products, bringing in cutting-edge equipment, and teaching advanced harvesting methods to local farmers. The result? Vegetable yields have surged. KOPIA started providing high-quality potato seeds to local farmers in 2015, and since then, annual production of potatoes has risen nearly 15%. With their high yields, Korean potato seeds have reduced the nation's concerns about a possible potato shortage. Potatoes are a staple in Uzbekistan, as it consumes an average of 2.5 million tons of potatoes per year, 3 times the annual amount in Korea. Meanwhile, the introduction of Korean greenhouses has made farming more convenient and has allowed farms to thrive even during the harshest season of the year. Uzbek farmers say strawberry and tomato crops were successful over the winter.
I recommend that farmers use Korean strawberry seeds because the quality of the fruit is good and they produce a lot.
With its recent success in the agriculture industry, KOPIA is set to expand its aid program to help out Uzbekistan's livestock industry. The process has already begun, with Korea sending top-quality animal feed to help in Uzbek cattle grow stronger.
Cho Sang-min, Business Daily.
And time now for a review of this week's top financial news stories from around the world. And for that, our Elliot Kim gives us a look at 3 stories that could have wide-ranging implications on the global economy.
In U.S. news, Jerome Powell looks to be the odds-on favorite to become the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. This is according to PredictIt, a website that predicts political and financial events, with Fed Governor Powell leading the odds at 39%. Above the 30% for Kevin Warsh and 10% for incumbent Janet Yellen. Powell's odds rose to as high as 52% earlier this week. On Wednesday, Politico reported Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin has apparently been pushing for Powell and has privately recommended him to President Donald Trump. Trump has said no decision will come this month, but what significance could this have when the decision comes? Well, both leading candidates favor a looser hand regarding banking regulations, and are seen as less likely than a Bernanke-led Fed to intervene when the stock market tumbles. The key differences come in how they view interest rates and what moves would be made to diminish the $4.5 trillion balance sheet, which is mostly bonds purchased to stimulate the economy during the last financial crisis. Warsh is seen as more of a hawk, a disruptor, the type of person that Trump pledged for during his presidential campaign. But business-wise, Powell would be a more predictable choice. With an interest rate hike set to come in December, whoever becomes the next Fed chairman could have a significant impact on global trade. Over in the Mediterranean, reports in Turkey indicate that the country has acquired a drillship, the Deep Sea Metro 2, built in 2011 at a Hyundai heavy industry shipyard in Ulsan, South Korea. Turkey's Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, Berat Albayrak, says the country plans to start drilling for hydrocarbons in the Mediterranean later this year, with the first deep drilling occurring in 2018. Turkey aims to open wells in Turkish and Cypriot waters, with drilling also taking place in the Black Sea. The country conducted seismic studies for oil and gas drilling locations earlier in April this year. An estimated 110 billion cubic meters of gas is buried in the Mediterranean Sea. And in a growing trend worldwide, electric cars are expected to replace gas-powered vehicles faster than initially anticipated. While earlier studies were more conservative, recent studies have bumped up the expected market share. Bloomberg New Energy Finance recently increased its 35% market share estimate in 2040 to 54%. There is a sizable roadblock standing in the way of electric vehicles' popularity, and according to Morgan Stanley, that is the cost of building the infrastructure needed to support the vehicles. In an October 9th report, the global financial services firm projected a need for $2.7 trillion to build up the current ecosystem and allow electric vehicles to reach the forecasted 526 million units by 2040. The estimate comes from scaling up Tesla's current network of charging stations and assembly plants to show how infrastructure could be the biggest bottleneck for the industry's expansion. With countries vowing left and right to support electric cars, and even committing to end sales of gas-powered cars on various dates, a mixture of private and public spending on a global scale will likely be required for progress to continue. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
And that does it for today and this week. We'll be back next week with more of the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend.